What's up, sons? It's Blind Ride with Son of a Tech once again, and today I have yet another talking head video. Today I wanted to talk about Linus tech tips. Yes, I know more than likely you are completely inundated with just YouTube suggestions about this particular topic, but of all of the videos that I have been watching regarding this, I think that there's a specific perspective on this that has not been touched, and that is the idea of subject matter experts on YouTube and their topics compared to once you start getting forced to do daily videos, etc., and adding additional people on to help facilitate that. So I also want to talk about that in relation to cryptocurrency and all of the YouTube channels surrounding that as well. Let's get into it. Welcome back. So I am no stranger to trying to please the YouTube algorithm, and I have attempted many different forms of content types to try to post daily on this particular YouTube channel. And in some cases it has been beneficial, and in other cases it has been detrimental to the algorithm. And when I look at the Linus Tech Tips section or problem going on, from my personal experience as a YouTuber, I start to see correlations, etc., that obviously bring a lot of things to light. So what are we talking about with Linus Tech Tips? Well, specifically I'm talking about the Gamers Nexus video, which brought up a bunch of discrepancies within the Linus Tech Tips testing methodology that has basically ended up providing inaccurate information to the viewer surrounding specific topics when they are reviewing them. Everything from your benchmark charts for the RTX 4090 to small things like getting the actual specifications on a product incorrect. Now, I am no stranger to making mistakes within YouTube videos. In fact, I make a lot more mistakes than you may be aware of, and I have to re-record a lot more than you might be actually aware of as well. And that is because when you are creating content, you are doing quite a few different steps. First of all, you find a topic, right? And typically you have a topic within your niche. For this channel in particular, it's cryptocurrency mining or cryptocurrency in general from the perspective of a cryptocurrency miner, right? But even that topic is extremely broad. There is a lot of different moving parts within that topic that you need to become at least pretty adept in determining in your knowledge of it to basically be able to present that information to the viewer as accurately as possible. And then in Linus Tech Tips case, what you have is essentially everything, a broad scope of technologies that need to have individual experts on those particular topics to make that content. From there, once you've kind of picked that, you move on to writing out maybe a script on a particular subject within that niche subject. So for cryptocurrency mining, I may be going over a new coin or a new algorithm for a particular GPU and its performance. Now at this point I have to be a subject matter expert in not only the GPU that I'm testing and all of its specifications, but how that is interpreted into a particular algorithm, and then how that plays out in the total economy of that coin, and so on and so forth. There's a lot to go over here. And really where I think the breakdown happens is as channels grow and as you get more subscribers and you are trying to pump out content over and over again, you end up needing additional help. Now, I have gone through a bunch of different trial and errors with getting more content out, part of which was picking up different editors, thumbnail editors, and so on. So now I need subject matter experts that are not only subject matter experts in the type of content and the niche that I'm in, but also within the actual tools that they use on a daily basis. So they need to be adept at editing video. or working in Photoshop. And then they also need to understand the content. And the fact of the matter is if somebody is a subject matter expert in their 20s, they aren't going to have the experience in both editing tools as well as NVIDIA GPUs and AMD GPUs and their performance specifications and all of that. So you end up having somebody that is not familiar with the subject that you are actually working on, editing that content. And so what ends up happening is a lot of things fall off. I've had this happen so many different times with so many different editors and thumbnail editors and some of the shorts editors that I tried for a while, where it just became more time consuming to go through and vet the content that was getting basically the final form of the content than if I just did it myself. And I think when we talk about large corporations at this point that are pumping out tech reviews, in the case of Linus Tech Tips, this is really where the breakdown happens, because the person editing isn't the person that's creating the charts, and the person creating the charts isn't the person that's testing the equipment, and the person that is testing the equipment even maybe hasn't had all of the experience even within that realm. Because the way Linus Tech Tips is hiring people is it's kind of like getting cheap work in by hiring people that are new to the industry, which can be fine if they are guided by somebody that has all of that experience. But in that kind of realm, you end up having this fall off to where it's more important to obviously get the content out for the algorithm from the perspective of the higher ups than it is to make sure that your employees understand the subject matter. And this happens in every single corporation, right? Like, this is why when you have a large IT company or a large company with a large IT department, you'll have a systems administrator for Linux and a systems administrator for Windows and so on. But if you put that into a YouTube context and you have a subject matter expert in Windows that is creating the charts, but then giving that off to a subject matter expert that is purely doing the social media side of things, when that person is editing that content, they aren't going to be able to catch any of the mistakes that may be happening on that slide. And if you talk about like presentations as a whole, a lot of these minute details are very, very important for the end product to actually be accurate. And so when I'm looking at this personally, I do think, like I have talked about, slowing down the content on the channel. I have had good editors, don't get me wrong. I've had people that are passionate about cryptocurrency that do this as well. And I've worked with a lot of different people, but that fall off is extremely difficult. And so I think when we talk about Linus Tech Tips, the hiring needs to be more along the lines of traditional hiring within an IT department. You know, how many years experience do you have within the tech industry, right? How do you understand, you know, a gigabit versus a gigabyte? Do you understand these differences and so on before you come in and start editing? Because your last line of defense, I think, is going to be subject matter experts that are adept in editing, because really the final mark is the person that's putting everything together, which I found, like, in the flow process is the most difficult thing, is like, how do I get this? How do I convey everything that I've tested to the person that's editing the video? And then hopefully that person also has a decent idea of how to put all that together. I've sent stuff off to people where I'm like, you know, here's the hash rate chart, here's the B-roll, here's the A-roll of my talking points or whatever, and they can't even put the right chart onto the right portion of the script because they don't understand the actual subjects that are being put in. And so at that point, then I'm like, okay, well, you know, B-roll part 1 goes with A-roll part 1, and then you end up having to clip all that. And then at the end of the day, as an individual, you're just doing all of the work anyways. You might as well just pop into Premiere, learn how to do it, and get it all clipped right. And even if it's not to the standards of what somebody who is really, really good at utilizing Premiere and OBS or whatever it may be, you are still going to be more accurate. So you have a little bit less quality, but you have more accuracy. And then this is kind of the game that gets played and rolled around over and over and over again. Where I would think that the breakdown really happens, like I said before, is that you have to have individual subject matter experts across a large, broad term of technology, right? And individual ones, and then a subject matter expert that's really good at editing, and they probably don't know all of the differences in all of the different IT terms and fields that are being covered, and this makes it extremely difficult, I think, to run a YouTube channel. See, the way YouTube used to be is you had an individual that was sharing their subject matter that they are passionate about and experts in directly to the viewer. And in those particular cases, when it's one individual that is just sharing that information, it's a lot more likely to be accurate because that person is specifically passionate about that specific subject. But if you have somebody that's really passionate, like you would want at editing video in Premiere, they are probably not going to have the experience in all the other aspects, because as humans, we can really only obtain expert level status in specific subjects. And once you start spreading that out, it breaks down. And this is also what happens in the evolution of Linus Tech Tips overall for Linus himself, because while he may have been working at NCIX in his history, right, and been very passionate about all the specifications of each individual product and so on, as Linus Tech Tips grew, he became a different expert, which was an expert in YouTube and an expert in running a business. And he had to learn all of that stuff. Well, if he starts learning all of that stuff, he starts to fall off on all of the rest of the old details that he used to know, all the specifications for individual graphics cards, for CPUs, because the human brain's not going to be able to retain all of the new information that he needs to have, along with all of the old information that he needs to have. For something to come into your brain, something has to come out. This is just, we do have bandwidth issues as human beings, and that is the way it's going to operate. So to see this evolution and to see the quality of the subject matter experts within Linus Tech Tips fall off makes a lot of sense. And so when you are looking at maybe creating a YouTube channel or growing your YouTube channel, like I'm looking at now, when I look at all of these different topics and I take, these lessons that I see from Linus Tech Tips, I go, well, if I was going to hire an editor, I'd want to hire an editor that is extremely well-versed within cryptocurrency mining. And maybe that editor just wants to actually make his own YouTube channel, right? Because at that point, that individual is going to be able to provide that information on their own, and they already have the know-how to edit and create videos and put them out. So really, you have to be willing to do it, I think, to a certain extent, all on your own, because that's the only way you're going to catch all of the little details that need to be resolved. And it ends up being a problem of also the blame game, which I think has also come across in some of the more recent revelations of the work environment within LTT. But that's a lot of ad hominem. That's a lot of stuff that I didn't want to cover overall. Just on outside of that, though, what we did learn is that they were hiring people that were new to basically the industry, right? Somebody that didn't have all of the experience. And unfortunately, it sounds like that turned into a pretty negative work environment, because they're like, well, you need to learn this. But the person's like, well, I'm trying to learn it. But every time I try to learn it, they're being extremely negative. And that can happen within any work environment. So when I sit down and look at this, I do want to know, from the audience's perspective, where the importance should lie, right? Does the importance lie on, the accuracy of the information over everything else? How much of that needs to be presented well? What is the difference between quality versus quantity, etc.? And how do we, as content creators, start to push back against the algorithm to say, hey, look, like this is how we need to re-incentivize the industry, I think, as a whole, because if we look at it and we take a step back, it really has turned into basically how fast can I pump things out? You know, how quickly can I get this information out? Am I beating the guy next to me? But am I also sacrificing, you know, the quality of the content at that point? And it's been something that I've thought about for a long time. And I really think, like I've even said before, like it'd be great to have like the Linus tech tips of cryptocurrency mining. Like that would be really, really cool. And a very niche subject of that, or a very niche channel version of that, right? That covers. But then if I look at it from the mining perspective, if you wanted to cover everything, you have ASIC miners that really you need individual experts in. You have GPU mining that you need individual experts in. You need CPU mining. You have FPGAs, which definitely takes a whole other set. And then if we're talking about trade analysis and individual coins and the economies of those, the tokenomics of each individual coin and so on, it becomes extremely overwhelming. That's why I do the news subjects, so that I can get all of that information out. But at the same time, just understanding or getting my head around each individual coin, what they offer, if they're BS or not, and so on, that takes a majority of the time of just sitting around researching and learning, right? And then translating that to somebody else to edit, just it seems like it falls off because you're not going to be able to catch it. I'll be recording a video and be like, oh, wait, that's wrong, right? Step back, let's go ahead and correct that, re-record. But if I have somebody editing, they're not going to catch that unless they are subject matter experts in the niche that you're recording the video or the content for. Anyways, that's some of my 2 cents surrounding this entire subject. I would like to hear your thoughts and opinions down in the comment section below. I do think that there is a responsibility, on my part individually, to try to make sure that the accuracy is there. I do fail at that, right? But how can we make that even better, I think is another point. And then how do you scale that is something that I'm definitely sitting back and thinking about a lot lately. I'll see you next Tuesday. Don't forget, you can check out my locals at sonofatech.locals.com. Becoming a supporter over there will get you access to supporter only posts where I talk about my daily moves and new coins before I talk about them on YouTube. You can get a free month of that by signing up for my crypto mining e-course at sonofatech.com.